welcome. My name is Andrea Neptune. For those of you that may not know me, I am an English professor here on campus. I started teaching in 1997 as a part-time faculty member. In 2002, I was hired full-time, and I've served as, for a few years, I served as a staff development coordinator, and then I served 4 years as the academic senate president. And I am currently on sabbatical. Shh, I'm sneaking in here just to do this particular presentation per request by other part-time faculty. This is actually my 6th year putting this on in the spring. And this workshop was developed from a discussion that we had in Academic Senate and talking about how the interview process shouldn't be a mystery. And that we wanted to help our own part-time faculty get those full-time jobs. So I know that this spring in particular, we have, I think 12 positions that Sierra College is hiring for, not to mention other colleges in the area. So my background as far as interviewing goes, as a part-time faculty, I think I had 12 interviews total before I was hired full-time. That may not be the norm. I don't know what the norm is, but I know occasionally I have heard of people like first interview, and bam, they get that full-time job. And that does happen. I know as an English professor, we are a very large department. And I know at Sierra College, we have 80, 90 part-time faculty alone. And so it's very competitive. And so when a position opens up, there can be up to 200 applicants for one position. And so I went through my rounds in the area of interviewing. And each time I interviewed, I got a little bit better and a little bit better. Even still, I had 5 second interviews in the area, actually 6 if you count the one that actually got me the full-time job at Sierra College. And I learned from my mistakes and through trial and error. And so it wasn't until the very end that I realized in particular what I could be doing better. And so I will share that with you at the very end of today's workshop. Essentially, there are three parts to the interview process. The first part is the first part is the application. The second part is the first interview. And the third part is the second interview. And so the tip is that during all 3 parts, assume that your audience does not know you or your background. So each step is really kind of independent of the other 2 steps. And so you want to treat each step separately. And again, that'll make more sense as we go through each one. So the first part, of course, is the application process. And for that, I have invited our HR specialist, Brittany Kelly, to walk you through the application process. This is more important than ever because Sierra College has a brand new application software, NeoGov. And so I'm going to turn this over to Brittany, who's going to walk you through those steps and through that process. So Brittany.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So just to let you know, I've been with Sierra for 1.5 years. And so we were with Higher Touch, if any of you were using it before. And we just recently decided that we needed something a little bit different to just give a more, I guess, intuitive process for everyone at Sierra, including the applicants, but also us as well. We were running into some issues. So hopefully this eases a lot of issues on the applicant side. It does save your application with this new system as well. So a lot of this stuff will pretty much be saved. But yeah, so I'm also pretty new to this workshop as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know as we're going through. I did set up a training applicant in NeoGov. So if for some reason you want to see something, just let me know and I can show you. And then Latoya is also on, so I may call on her. She may jump in if you have any questions, or if you if she wants to mention anything as well. She's on here. I don't know if Latoya, you wanted to introduce yourself. Let me know.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I couldn't unmute myself. My name is Latoya Jackson Lainez. My pronouns are she, her, hers, ella. For those of you who do not know me, I am the Director of Diversity, EEO, and Title IX for the district. And so I work very closely with Brittany and oversee pretty much most of the recruitment process.
I've also noted that Cameron Abbott will be popping in later. He had a 4 o'clock meeting, but he is our Director of Human Resources, and so he'll be stopping by later on as well.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Oh, it looks like it won't allow me to share. Hold on.
We didn't think about that, did we?
I think if Andrea stops sharing, then Brittany may be able to start sharing.
Okay.
Oh, gotcha.
Stop share. There we go. Yay.
Perfect. Okay,
Thank you,
cool.
Latoya.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so this is what our career page looks like now. So I don't know if any of you have seen it before, but hopefully it kind of stands out a little bit more. Higher touch, I think it was a little bit hard to kind of see where things were, but hopefully now it gives you just a better view. Another thing too, I kind of wanted to point out with this applicant tracking system is NeoGov has an applicant helpline. So typically, if there's any technical issues with the application process, you can reach out to them and they can help you. Unfortunately, from my end, I can't see a lot of the incomplete applications and where maybe there might be an issue. So the best option would be to reach out to them. And they also have a help guide as well, because you do get to save your application within NeoGov and you get to create an account. And it allows you with other just institutions using NeoGov, it allows you to keep your same kind of profile to be able to apply to that as well. So it saves everything as long as everyone's using Government Jobs NeoGov. So this is kind of what it will look like. And here is pretty much where the phone number and how to reach out and the applicant guide is. There's also a support button, which I'll show you inside the application that will take you to their phone number and all their contact information as well. So let's see. Also, just to get to this page, our original human resources page, which is on the Sierra College website, you can go to view all jobs and it will take you directly to that career page. And then there's also this sign in button, which is where you'll sign in if you did create the application. So let's see. So pretty much to start off with the timeline, I know I was going to mention a little bit about that as well. So for start to finish, so from when we open to the final interview process, it will pretty much take about 14 to 16 weeks. So it is required for our faculty positions to be open for 6 weeks. And then for minimum qualification review, it will take about 2 weeks, depending on how many applications. We typically set it up for 2 weeks. And then after that is when all the applications that were approved get sent over to the committee. And they typically take about 2 to 3 weeks as well. And then from there is when we have the first interview and the second interview. And that's typically about 2 weeks after the committee has sent over. Once they've pretty much sent over everything to Human Resources for approval on who they'd like to move forward with, it kind of depends as well, just when final interviews are. We work with the instruction office on that. And so we kind of base the timeline on where we are with final interviews. And so that's kind of the timeline. It can change, but I'd say it's about 14 to 16 weeks. And so I did create So pretty much when you get to the application that you're looking to apply to, this is what will pop up and you can review. It will have much more information than this one, but it will pretty much, this is where you can review everything. And then the apply button will be at the top right. And this is where you'll sign in. And it will take you to the application. So I pretty much have everything saved in here, but if you're first creating, it will pretty much ask you through the whole process. And so you'll fill out all the initial information. This is going to look a little bit different though as well, just because our faculty is set up just a little bit different, the application. So it won't have some of these preference questions. This was just our training module, so it had these items in here. But it will ask a lot of this contact information and stuff like that for you to be able to save and reapply for other positions. And then you'll just pretty much go through the steps. There will be a little green check mark. If there was anything that was required that wasn't completed, you'll see a red, let's see if I can show you. So a little red exclamation point will pop up. So it will let you know, and you can go back and it will highlight everything that was forgotten. So it will take you back and you can go in there and put that information in. But pretty much it will walk you through your work experience and then the education, which at the end of the application, it will ask for your transcripts. And you will, I know sometimes I get questions related if they need to be unofficial or official. They can be unofficial for the application process, but if you are selected for hire, we will request sealed official transcripts. The other thing is too, when your application is going through the minimum qualifications, they are going to look that the conferred date and the degree that was conferred is listed on your transcripts. And then if for some reason we don't have that, we'll reach out and let you know that that's missing. And we'll need that in order to move your application forward. So just note something that's something that they're looking for. But yeah, I will pretty much take you through whatever's required. And the requirements, I can show you really quick on our regular. So for example, it will tell you in the application what all the required application documents are. So this is what it will list pretty much in the application, and it will ask you if you've uploaded your cover letter that states this information, and then if you uploaded your teaching philosophy statement as well, and it will ask you to confirm that. And then if there's any additional documents. And then just another question that with this new system, especially that I've been asked, it will only show transcript as one upload, and we would like you to upload your undergraduate and graduate and any other transcripts that you have that for minimum qualifications. And to do that, you'll click this add supplemental attachment to be able to upload a second transcript or any other document that you would like to upload that you will put on there as well. So just so you know, it's all the way at the bottom. It's kind of hidden. Okay, and then yeah, so these are, it will ask if you meet the minimum qualifications for the position, and it has the link. I thought it was going to hyperlink. We're still kind of working. I'm still trying to work with them to see if I can get it so it will take you straight to the minimum qualifications handbook. But that will be there. And then also if you if you're not sure if you meet, there will be on the Human Resources webpage the equivalency documents as well. So you can click on that link if you need to upload. So that would be something else in the attachments that you'll want to upload, and you can do that under the other.
Oh, never mind. I think we're going to do the same exact thing. I saw the chat stuff, so I'll let you do that.
I was going to say, someone had to.
You muted yourself, Andrea.
But I'm muting. Thank you. Brittany, someone has a question about what was kind of hidden or what is hidden. They missed the context of what you were saying.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Earlier you mentioned that something is kind of hidden. Can you clarify what that was?
It was the transcript.
Yeah, so this one is, sorry about that. This is hidden, the add supplemental attachment. I think that can sometimes be hidden when you're uploading everything. If you scroll all the way down, you'll be able to open that and you can choose multiple attachments to upload more. So it's not just going to be the ones in red. You can upload as many other documents as is required. So just so you know, it won't show that there's 2 sections for transcripts. You'll have to click that add supplemental documents.
If we already have information in from the old system, is it transferred over or do we have to start over?
You will have to start over, unfortunately. We did keep all the applications, sorry about that, but we weren't able to upload it into this new system. So I would recommend redoing a whole application, and then it will save. And then also too, you can apply as many, it will pretty much save everything in here, everything that you've uploaded.
Okay. If necessary, would we be able to access that information again if we needed to? I'm just not sure if I have it all the same. Okay. Okay.
I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions?
Brittany, one question.
Yeah.
So there's a open job that I applied for like back in December that I haven't heard yet, but when I applied, I don't think this new system was in place. Is that application going to get through and be considered if it went in through the old system?
So when did you apply?
It was before Christmas. So, like maybe the week before Christmas.
Actually, I think I know. So we're still in the process with that application. So you'll probably hear within a couple weeks. I think we just finished. Was that for business?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we just finished minimum calls review for that one.
Okay.
So now it's going to be sent over to the committee for review.
Okay. Okay. So I think you answered my question. I was just wondering if it needed to go in this system, if it was in the old one, but.
No. Oh no. Yeah, it's in this. So another thing I'll show you as well. Once I get through this application part, I'll show you where you can look at the status of your application. And it will let you know if it's being reviewed during the minimum call process, or if it's in for committee review, or if your first interview or second interview. It will show that now.
I think maybe to just answer that question a little thoroughly is that we no longer have our old system. So I believe all of our current job postings or recently closed job postings should be under this new system. So you probably would have applied through the system. Is that correct, Brittany?
Yes. Yeah. I think for the, I think too, I know that Higher Touch is a little behind. So I know that you may still see Higher Touch, and we've been trying to remove that link from places. So I would just try and avoid Higher Touch as much as possible. I think they're working towards getting that fully down. But all of our links should now be NeoGov, and you should find it there.
Chris, if I could jump in real quick. Chris, what we may want to do is just not take any more time from this training, but let's help you offline. I'm curious to kind of follow up with you a little bit more, find out if you applied through Higher Touch, when that happened, et cetera, so that we can look into that. Because the new system was up and the old links for Higher Touch were pulled down, I want to say before Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So I'm concerned that you may have accessed a point that we didn't catch. or there may be another problem there. They sent us over flat files and they said they closed the system. So we need to do a little more digging just to kind of figure out, make sure that we have your application and make sure it's in the pool.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Cameron, do you want to introduce yourself in case folks don't know you?
Sure. Sorry, everybody. I was on another call and had to race over here as quick as I can. I'm Cameron Abbott. I'm Director of Human Resources. Brittany's boss, but Brittany clearly is the brains of the outfit when it comes to higher touch and NeoGov and the system itself. So you're in good hands with her. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, so pretty much this is where you'll do the applications, and then once you have everything in, it will ask you these final questions. Pretty much if you meet minimum quals, and if you aren't sure, you can submit an equivalency document into and attach it to your application as well, which the link is on that question. It pretty much asks to confirm that you uploaded your cover letter, your teaching philosophy, and then it pretty much asks demographic questions and conviction questions. So pretty much everything that probably was on the higher touch application, this is kind of the end of it. And so you'll go through, let me just make sure I have all of them. And then it will ask you to review. So you'll get to review everything, make sure that you, have everything in there that you needed, had uploaded everything. So it will give you a summary. And then it will ask you to pretty much accept and submit your application. So one thing that we are working through right now is this. Once it's submitted, it is final. So if you do realize that you didn't upload something, or if there's an error, reach out to NeoGov and they can help. They could possibly help with fixing that issue. And if for some reason you can't, you can reach out to me after that, or they can't fix it. If it's something a little bit like with the application or the attachments, just reach out to me and we can work on getting that uploaded. So they have an applicant support line that you'll be able to reach out to them and they can help fix your application if needed. And then if for some reason you realize there's a ton of errors and want to resubmit, like I said, it saves everything that you did. So you can always go back in there, and if needed, just reach out to me and let me know that you're going to have to do a whole new one. But I would start with NeoGov first, just to make sure that they can't fix it. And then you'll get an email that it was submitted. And then this is where you can go check to see your the application status. So you can click on the application in that confirmation notice. And it will tell you right here if the application was, when the application was received, if it's under committee review. Like I said, this is a training one, so it has other things, but it pretty much will tell you either your application was received, it's under minimum quals review, it's under committee review, first interview, final interview is what those statuses will say. And then if you have any incomplete, you can go here as well to see if you have any that are incomplete. But if you were to log in, let's say this was a few days later or a couple weeks later and you were to log in, you pretty much just log back into the system. So when you go to our applicant or our career page, there's a sign in button at the top right, and you can click on that to sign in, and you can go to applications, and then it will bring you to all the applications you applied to through NeoGov.
Brittany, there's a question from Elise. It says, for the question confirming of submitting the cover letter, etc., what is expected to be typed in that box?
Oh, you'll just click yes or no. It's just pretty much to confirm that you were able to upload that cover letter, and you were able to, because it is a required document, we are just reconfirming that it was uploaded as a required attachment to your application. So it's just a yes or no question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I have one. I was trying to type it in. Sorry.
That's
If
okay.
you- I was like, and somehow I got into a different place. I don't know. So it says invite and mute me. So I don't think I'm in the right place. The question I have is, do you have to do it all in one attempt? Because usually, can you do part of it, save it, and then come back and finish it until you submit it?
Yes. So yeah, you can always come back to it. So if you just finish one portion of it, or any portion, you can sign back in on our career page, and it will be in this incomplete section right here. So you'll click on your name at the top right, you'll click applications once you're signed in, and then you can click incomplete.
Excellent. All right. I've got a lot to redo. So, okay, thank you.
Feel free to reach out to if you have questions. Any other questions?
Brittany, I had a question
Yeah.
regarding application preferences. For a faculty, like the questions asked, if we leave it blank, is that okay? Like what shifts are you available to work? Or do we have to mention anything, or relocation comments?
Yeah, so those ones, I think it's just because of the training application that I'm in, so it doesn't ask those questions in our actual faculty position. This was just a temporary applicant and application, so it won't ask those in our actual faculty positions. I don't think.
No, but I'm there and I'm looking at it, and I've done it. And on my application, when I'm applying for faculty position, it does ask me, but it's not mandatory. Like it's red. But it does ask me, like that box is there.
And someone
Okay.
else is agreeing. Yeah, that's they also had those same questions too.
The same question.
It
Okay.
asks you, all that thing. What's your minimum compensation requirement and all that?
It might be because it is a government, because it's a system for all government applications. It may be something that when you start the application, it is not required, but it is something that's built in. But I'm gonna look at it to just make sure that that's not something that, just to make sure that I can remove it if needed.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was leaving it blank. I'm like, okay, is that going to be an issue? So
yeah, no, those can be left blank. If anything was required, I marked that it was required.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other questions?
Brittany, would you, I know the next slide on my PowerPoint outlines the process for the application process from the point that the job announcement goes out to the point that the new full-time faculty members are notified. Can you walk the part-time faculty members through that timeline again? Because I know that's often there's a big question, like, why does it take so long? I applied 3 months ago. So can you just walk them again through that timeline? Thank you.
Yeah, so when we post the position, it is required to be posted for 6 weeks. So it will, whenever it gets posted, it will close 6 weeks from that date, unless they wanted to extend it longer, the hiring chair. And so that's that part. And then after that, pretty much the applications, all of them that are submitted go through minimum qualifications, and that's just to ensure that your application or your background is meeting the minimum qualifications set by the CCC. And that is, the handbook is listed as well too on the application. And so that just gets reviewed and making sure your transcripts are all there, and making sure that if there's anything, you know, required, everything pretty much in your application is there for that minimum qualifications review. So if you submit equivalency forms, they'll review that as well and go through that process through a committee. So all of that will be in there. And so that typically is about 2 weeks. And so sometimes I think it may be 3 weeks, just depending on how many applications there are, but we do set time for 2 weeks. And then after that, if for some reason I need to reach out to anyone just because either transcripts were missing or it didn't have the conferred date on it, or we needed to confirm the degree, then I would reach out within that time frame as well, or right after that 2 week period. So sometimes the application can get submitted a little bit after that 2 week period to the committee, just because we're gathering those documents. So that's 2 weeks. And then those that are approved to move forward because they do meet minimum qualifications will get sent to the committee. And that is typically 2 to 3 weeks. And they'll review all those applications. And at the 3 week mark, typically, they'll reach back out to Human Resources to let them know which applications are moving forward to the first interview. And then from there, it usually is going to take, that can range from like the next week will be, 1 week, and then interviews would take place that following week, just depending on the schedule of the committee, or it will be like 3 weeks out from that time. So it could range between 1 to 3 weeks when the interviews would take place. And you'll receive a call, typically, so Kara in Human Resources is actually doing a lot of my calls right now to schedule interviews. So that you'll typically, if you are selected to move forward, you'll hear from her and she'll help schedule those interviews. And they typically range over, I don't know, like we typically do like 3 to 4 days, just because now we're online, and it is a whole online process too. So from question review, and then if there's any any type of demonstrations, that will all be a part of that online as well. And then the final interviews is usually a week or 2 after that.
Brittany, when are the applicants notified, first the applicants, if they're not getting an interview, and then when are the candidates notified that they did not get a position? So if someone applied, like how long will it take before they find out they didn't get it?
Yeah, so you'll get an email after, if you've met minimum quals or not. So you'll get that email, and then you can check the status to see if your application was transferred over to the committee for review. And then when it comes to if you did get an interview or not, you'll receive an email that if you didn't get an interview. So after the committee has reviewed and after everybody who has been passed over to first round interviews, all other applicants will get an email stating that they were not selected to move forward. And then for finals, if an applicant was not selected to move forward to finals, you'll actually get an email or phone call from the hiring chair. So all the other email communications and status updates will come from Human Resources, but after the first interview, it will come from the hiring chair.
Right, thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Part-time faculty, are there any other questions for Brittany? Or about the application process? No, okay. Well, thank you, Brittany, for joining us today and for walking us through that. If you can cancel sharing your screen, And I can, there we go.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
there we go.
You're welcome.
So let's see. That was the application. So we kind of walked through the timeline of the process, the opening, the closing, the pre-screening, the application review, and then the interview scheduling. So going over the timeline that Brittany just went over, it's around 15 weeks from the first day that the job announcement's posted until someone is actually hired to fill that position. So it does take a while. And I know that when you've applied, it feels like it's forever. But that's why I think kind of demystifying that timeline. And it sounds like HR has a really good communication process as well. And it's neat that NeoGov allows you to look and see if your application has been forwarded. So that's a good marker as well. Let's see. So Brittany just kind of highlighting, she went over the MQs, the minimum qualifications, uploading your transcripts, your resume, submitting your application. So today's tip for the application process is that the application creates the committee's first impression of you. So you want to spend time, make sure that you develop your application, that you're responding to those questions. Take your time actually filling those out. Don't just say, see resume, because you're creating that first impression for the interview committee. And so what the committee does with your applications is they will read all of the applications. Each committee member that's on there, that's on the committee, will they read each one, and there is a scoring rubric that they use to evaluate. And so each member will score each application. And then the committee members get together and they compare scores, and those with the highest scores floats to the top. And there's some deliberation and discussion, especially if there's any kind of anomalies in the ratings. And then the committee will select the top candidates to move forward to the next round, which is the first interview. So again, spend some time on that application process. That's where you're trying to get that first interview. Okay, I'm gonna move on. So let's talk about that first interview. So tip, the application gets you the interview, then you start all over again in the next stage. So I mentioned at the very beginning to think of these three parts as three separate stages, separate from themselves. So I know in the past when I've served on interviews committees, I know occasionally, but not very often, an interview member, a committee member, actually might not read the applications. I don't know if I think we're getting away from that, but I know this happened in the past, and I don't know if other colleges, if they still do that. But if a committee has plenty of committee members, there might be one person that says, you know what, right now I have other conflicts and I don't have time to read all those interviews. Can I just be on the interview process? And the only reason I point that out is just kind of remind you that when you go in for that first interview, think of it like you're starting all over. Yes, they've read your most likely all of them have read your applications, but treat it like a fresh start. So you are informing them that minute you walk through that door for your interview, all about who you are and what kind of instructor you are. So think of it like you're starting all over from scratch in that next stage for the first interview. So some of the logistics for the committee. So there's at least 2 area faculty, and there may be more. It depends on how many full-time faculty members have applied, and how many the Academic Senate has chosen to appoint. Also, the chair can choose to expand a committee or keep it at its core, but no matter what, there'll be at least 2 area faculty. And then there are also, one of those typically is the chair. So the chair of the department is usually on the hiring committee. There's also 1 out of discipline faculty member. So that means at least 3 faculty members on there. And again, there can be more. Occasionally, if there's not 2 area faculty, if you have a really small division and there's not 2 full-time faculty within that particular department, then there would be more out of discipline faculty. But no matter what, there's always 3 full-time faculty on the committee. Then the dean will serve on the committee and an EEO rep. So at the very least, there are 5 committee members. And again, often the chair will choose to expand, and there may be more. There can be up to 8 committee members there when you walk in that room. So anywhere between 5 to 8, I don't think more than 8. Try not to intimidate you too much, but generally this is the committee makeup. All right, so when you go in for your interview, you'll be given, I should go back, you'll be given a series of questions. You're given these questions in advance, and you'll have generally 30 minutes before the interview to read over the questions and prepare your answers. Do you know that you can write your answers on that piece of paper that you are given? And so when you're actually in front of the hiring committee, you can refer to that piece of paper, follow along on the questions as they're reading them to you, and you have your notes right there, and you can glance down and then share your responses. So that gives you time to kind of prepare your answers. I don't recommend writing out paragraphs and then holding that sheet up and reading from it during the interview. But it's nice to have little quick notes that you can just glance down and then answer the question. There's generally about 5 or 6 questions that you'll be asked. And the first one is generally something like, what background and experiences make you a good candidate or good fit for this particular position? So generally that first question is always going to be basically, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your background. What have you taught? Where have you taught? What other kind of committees have you been on? What job experience do you have? This is the question that we expect you to spend the most time on. Although you also do need to be aware of the timeline, because you don't want to spend too much time on this question. You don't want to spend like half your time. Generally, you'll have somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes to answer the questions, and this will be, you'll be told this at the very beginning of the interview. You'll be told how much time you have. Generally, there's someone there that's also going to give you like a time marker, let you know you have 5 minutes left. So we're trying to like help you pace yourself as you go through and answer the questions. But this one we do expect you to spend a little bit more time on. So do not assume they have read your application. So again, don't just go, oh, I know you already read my application, and then forget to mention things. So again, you're starting from scratch. So mention everything that's significant. Of course, it doesn't mean like every itty bitty little committee that you've ever been on, but you want them to note your job experience. So what makes you stand out from the next candidate or the one before you? So inform them, and they'll also be taking notes as you are giving the interview. The committee members will be writing down notes so they can refer to them later. So don't let that discourage you, that if you look out and you're talking and all the heads are down and they're busy writing. Try to pick one person or one place to kind of put your focus, but do know that they're just doing their due diligence because they want to be able to refer to their notes later as they're discussing the various candidates. Sometimes job interviews can take 2, 3 full days of interviews, and all the details kind of blur together. So by the candidates writing out the notes, writing out what you're saying, it can help them through their discussions later. Let's see. So do not assume they have read your application. So you're starting from scratch. Feel free to spend more time on this first question, and you may use notes or an outline as a reference. So feel free to, in addition to having those questions in front of you, you might also have a copy of your own resume in front of you. You can have them in front of you nice and neat on the table. Again, don't read from it. You can quickly glance down and go, oh yeah, I was on that one committee. I know sometimes during an interview, we get nervous, we talk fast, we like forget things. And so being able just to kind of glance down and pick something to talk about for a little bit is a great way to make sure that you've included all the details of your background and experience. So tip, no matter how great a teacher you are, you must give a strong interview to move to the next step. And this is really important. No matter how outstanding of an instructor you are, if you don't have strong interview skills, you may not get that teaching position. So this is separate from how wonderful you are. So you need to be able to sit in front of a group of people and talk about yourself and talk about your background. And so it may take practice. I recommend practicing in front of a mirror or practicing with a friend, thinking about what possible questions that they might ask, and preparing some answers in your head so that you're not showing up cold blank. And just being confident, trying not to be nervous. So take a deep breath, have a sip of water. They generally give you a bottle of water during the interview. And so if you find yourself feeling nervous or jittery, just take that bottle and take a swig, put it back down, take a deep breath, and then respond to the question. Before I move on to the first question, are there any questions? I know I'm talking a lot.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any interviews taking place this year are going to have to be online, right? Because I've done in-person ones before, but how is it different? I mean, do you go to the campus and sit in a room by yourself and interview online? I mean, how does that work?
That's good. I'm going to try to answer that, but Cameron or Latoya, if you guys want to pitch in. So I believe the interviews will be held via Zoom, just like we're doing now. And so I would be the interview candidate. All of you would be the committee members. We would be engaging via video. You are, I think you'll be emailed the questions in advance. You'll be getting all the materials in advance. You could still have your resume right in front of you. So the only difference is instead of sitting around a table in a boardroom, you'll be, connecting and interviewing via the computer screen.
Yeah,
is that correct, Latoya?
Yeah, that's a great question, John. So we have been conducting Zoom interviews for essentially almost the past year now. We have it down pretty well, and so we would send you the Zoom link, very similar to what you had for today's presentation. All folks will be sort of in their homes, and we all recognize that this is an unusual environment we're in, and so we try to make it it's still a formal interview, but we are also flexible, as we know that folks run into internet issues, and so we run into a lot of different things, and we have it nailed down pretty well, but everything is via Zoom at this point.
And what do you do when somebody's internet connection freezes at their home? I mean, that happens a lot.
It does. So we typically will stop time if that happens. We've had folks who, their cameras don't necessarily work, so they'll have to turn their cameras off. And so we're really flexible, just kind of, like all of the accommodations and things we would do for our students, we do for our applicants as well. And so not to worry, we run into, I think, quite a bit of different situations, and I think we have it down pretty well at this point. And if not, we work through it together, and we try our best to get through that interview together.
Great, that makes me feel better. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will add that even pre-COVID, that Zoom interviews or distance interviews do happen or have happened, especially if there's a candidate that's in another state. Instead of requiring them to fly in for that first interview, that doing Zoom conferencing has been allowed as well. Any other questions before I move on? Okay, so interview content. So again, prepared set of questions. You'll receive 30 minutes beforehand. Typically, actually, Latoya, how is that handled? Are they emailed now? You can't get them back from them.
Yeah, so so the questions are emailed ahead of time, and then we try to do the honor system and ask you all to delete the questions or dispose of the questions after the interview is over.
Okay, so generally in an in-person interview, after your interview is over, you're asked to hand over your questions. Even if you have notes on them, it's shredded later, but it's just for confidentiality purposes. And the committee is using a rubric. So they are expecting certain answers for certain questions. They might be looking for keywords in your answer. They are taking notes. They will be rating each question separately. And again, at the end of the interview, those scores kind of tallied up to see which candidates rise to the top. So in addition to the questions, during the interview, that first interview, it may also include a skills test, a performance demo, or a teaching demo. So for example, a skills test. I know in the English department, we have a grammar test that we give to all of our, or we give to the English candidates. I'm not sure what other departments do. It's going to vary from department to department. But you may be asked to do a skills test. A performance demo, in particular, this might be for a counseling position, for example. You might have a committee member pretend like they are a student, and they kind of set up a scenario, and they're going to put you up front at a desk, and the student will walk in with a particular issue or problem. And so on the spot, the goal is to see how you would handle that situation. So that would be a performance demo. And then the last is a teaching demo. So if you are an instructor in the classroom, you will have some kind of a teaching demo. It's usually around 10 minutes or 15 minutes. You are generally given the question in advance, or the topic in advance. I do recall one time I did have a first interview where I was given the topic on the spot, and that was much more challenging. And really, we're not trying to like trick you. We want to see you at your best. You would prepare your teaching lessons as part of your curriculum in front of the classroom. And so we want to see the same thing with you during the interview process. So you're given the topic in advance. You'll also be given that time marker, which is generally about 10 minutes to conduct that teaching demo. I'm going to talk about that more in just a moment. But I'm also going to add that what's becoming more common now also is that a department may opt to also have a student teaching demo. So as a first interview candidate, after you have done the interview with the committee, actually I think the student teaching demos, this is for LaToya, those are just for the second candidates, aren't they?
That's correct, and that is a requirement. So for all faculty positions, finalists will conduct a teaching demonstration in front of live students. Of course, the caveat is if for some reason we are interviewing and we're sort of off cycle, so we've had interviews that are like in between spring semester and summer semester, summer break, where we haven't been able to do that. But for the most part, all interviews, finalists will do a teaching demonstration in front of students.
So you can tell the interview process is constantly evolving and changing and improving every year as we go through these rounds. So I remember several years ago when I think the history department was the first one who wanted to try out the student demo. And then the next year, more departments added, and now it's a requirement. So that's great. And so during the student teaching demo, you are again given a topic in advance. You go up and you are welcomed into a room full of actual students. And you conduct your teaching demo on that lesson. And then the students will, they have a little rubric as well, and they will rate you. And then afterwards, after you leave the room, the students have a discussion about what went well, what didn't went well. And the committee uses that feedback in order to help make that final determination. So that student teaching demo is right before your second interview. So. Let's backtrack back to the teaching demo for your first interview. So again, you'll get the topic in advance, typically. At least at Sierra College, you will get the topic in advance. Note that timing matters. So if you are told that it's a 10-minute lesson, make sure that you can wrap up and conclude that lesson within the 10 minutes. You don't want to especially like if you're nervous and you're talking really fast and all of a sudden 5 minutes has gone by and you're like, okay, I'm done. You have 10 minutes. You want to utilize that time. You also don't want to be halfway through the middle of your lesson and be told that the time has ended. So plan out your time and practice your teaching demo. I know if you've ever taken the instructional skills workshop that's offered on campus through professional development, they practice in doing the 10 minutes lesson. And so that works really good. It's exactly those lessons is really what works well for the teaching demo. So plan it out. Now do know that you can do an abbreviated lesson. So for example, 1 year when I interviewed, we were told that we were to select a poem. So again, I'm an English instructor. We were to select a poem that we were to create a lesson for during this interview process. So I chose Baca's poem, Green Chili, if you're familiar with it. And so I went in, and the first thing I did is I asked them to do a free write. So I engaged the hiring committee, which are really your SWATO students. And so I treated them like students, and I asked them for 1 minute to free write about their favorite meal. which ties into the content of the poem. And normally in class, I would spend 10 minutes having them pre-write, but for this lesson, I just had them do it for 1 minute. So the committee gets the idea. They're also warming up, right? But also to get the idea or the essence of what I would do. I then also brought in green chilies and I passed them out with a plate. And I gave them 2 minutes to quickly describe all 5 senses with the green chilies. So I asked them to describe what the green chili looked like. I asked them to describe what it smelled like. What sounds did it make? And so they went through all the process, and if anyone was daring, I said they could taste it, which I think one person did, but I didn't require it. So I condensed what would normally take probably an entire class session to teach this one poem with the journal entry and with the sensory description, but I pared it down into little 1 minute segments. And then we went through and talked about the poem, and then we had a discussion at the end in like a minute, and I kind of wrapped it up. So you can pare it down your lesson so that at least the class kind of gets an idea, or the interview committee gets an idea of what you would do in a standard teaching setting. So plan out your time. Timing matters. Utilize your resources. So make sure that you are not just talking at the students, but that you have handouts, that you have a PowerPoint, that you're utilizing the whiteboard. So you want to be interactive and engaging. And so utilize your resources as needed. Of course, it's going to depend on your department and what the content is of the interview, of the topic. But utilize your resources to be engaging and interactive. And lastly is smile. So again, when you're walking into the class, we all put on our teacher smiles. We kind of embrace that energy and we engage our students. And it's really important to have that presence during your teaching demo as well. So even if you're nervous or you're feeling scared, just again, smile and teach the students, teach the interview, the committee members, just like they were your students. A tip, engage the students with active participation. So I don't recommend just lecturing to them for 10 minutes, but actually think of something that you can have them do in a condensed manner during that 10 minutes. And so from that also, don't just give them an activity to work in as groups for 10 minutes, because that doesn't show the hiring committee how you can teach or how you engage. So you don't want it to be all activity for the students, but you do want to have active participation as part of that teaching demo. I saw a hand, I think. Someone have a question?
I do. I just had a quick question.
Yeah.
So when you say you only do it for like 1 minute, do you state in your interview, normally I would give the students 10 minutes to do this, or normally I would, so you make sure you're very clear on how long and what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I'd say normally when we had more time, we might spend 10 minutes on this, but today we're just gonna focus on a minute.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, they know what you're doing. All right, I see there's 2 more hands. Mika.
Yes, actually, this is actually relating more to the interview earlier. You said there were going to be potentially some specific keywords they were going to want to hear. Like, I mean, I know every discipline is different, but what,
Right.
like, could you just give a little bit more? Yeah.
Yeah, so what I mean by like, again, all my examples are going to be English based, so I apologize for that. But like, if we're going to give the topic of the thesis statement, so we want to see a 10-minute lesson on a thesis statement. We're going to want keywords like stating the main points, reflecting your opinion or overall argument, because those are the 2 parts that are included in a thesis statement. Thesis should be located at the end of the introduction. So those are the kind of things that we're going to be looking for to make sure that you convey in your lesson. So they're not going to be anything that if you're familiar with that topic, you wouldn't know, right? So another reason too that we help clarify that, because remember there is someone on that hiring committee that's an out of area person, and so we kind of go over and say this is what should be covered in that lesson, so that they know what they're looking for as well. And so everyone on that committee is kind of looking for that same content, that same.
Okay, so but as far as the interview itself, the keywords you were just referencing to the actual demo.
Yeah, so just to clarify, during the interview, we're not looking for any specific keywords. And so during the interview process, right, the that's the beauty about having a diverse hiring committee, is that folks are looking at things through their own lenses. And so really what we're looking at is, how is this faculty member or potential faculty member going to contribute towards student success and closing equity gaps? We know those are our two main goals, right? Our institution. So as folks are listening to, your responses for each of these questions, we're looking at things through our own lenses, and then we come together at the end of all of the interviews and just kind of talk about what are the differences we saw, and who do we want to move forward based off of that information. So I think the old kind of prior to me working at Sierra, there used to be keywords on a rubric. Like, did somebody say diversity? Did somebody say, whatever word? And so we've moved away from that approach, and now it's more about looking at the candidate holistically and being able to engage in some intentional dialogue as a committee when it comes to each candidate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Oh, can I, Andrea, I did see a couple of questions in regards to teaching demos in the Zoom environment. And so some hiring committees are moving towards doing a pre-recorded teaching demo. And this is more, especially in the Zoom environment where folks, we know that, folks have technical glitches, or sometimes you think you have a great internet connection and sometimes you don't. And so there are some recruitments where there may be a pre-recorded teaching demo required instead of doing it sort of asynchronous during the actual interview itself. Or it may be synchronous. I know somebody asked, do you do a synchronous online course for the Zoom interview? So, or it might be the topic, we give you the topic ahead of time and you present it right then, 10 to 15 minutes during your actual interview. So it could range from pre-recorded to live during the interview.
Oh, thank you. Tanya, did you have a question?
Yeah, LaToya, you may have mostly just answered it, but besides general subject matter, competency, knowledge, and then contributing to student success and closing equity gaps, is there anything else that makes candidates really stand out? I mean, I guess that's not the best. If you're all coming at it from different approaches and different perspectives, maybe that's a hard question to answer, but maybe, if there's anything at all that makes a candidate stand out for you personally, maybe you could share that.
Yeah, and so I think the specific examples that Andrea mentioned as well, and I think for me specifically, and I think probably across the board, is just really how are you meeting students' needs? How are you helping students be successful? And so I think, I don't think that's anything new that we're looking for, as you saw through the job announcement and through the supplemental questions for those of you who already started applying, is, how are you demonstrating your equity mindedness, right? And so providing specific examples of how you do that throughout the interview process as well, I think is also probably key for all of the hiring committee members.
So a good point about the each interview committee is that each committee determines the questions that they're going to ask. So each committee is going to have different questions depending on the departments, so what they're looking for in particular, but also from year to year. So even if the same committee, like the math department, has hired several years in a row, each committee each year is going to come up with a different set of questions just depending on what they're looking for. And then also, I would say what's going on in the community college culture. So LaToya already pointed out some key concepts, which would be diversity, equity or equity gaps, student success, guided pathways. So these are things that you might want to brush up on. You might consider how you would answer questions based on those types of topics. Any other questions before I move on? Can't really see the chat, but I can.
Yeah, I see a couple of questions in the chat about establishing an online presence, that some colleges kind of have some questions surrounding that. And so, if you have I guess all of us at this point have distance
Yeah,
learning
that's good. That's true.
I know our institution does have a really strong distance learning program. I think our faculty members go through an actual program or course, if you will, when it comes to distance learning. So if you've gone through that, I think that's important to mention. Others in other spaces as well, as Andrea's mentioned, that folks might be applying to other full-time positions at other institutions.
Right.
So as far as, if that makes a difference for Sierra College, I think that any and all information is great to include during your interview process, right? We're looking at the holistic candidate. So if there's specific online teaching certificates or things that you've done, then I would say, absolutely, I'd probably include that information as well. Some full-time positions aren't quite announced yet. Yeah. I think there's a couple of brand new positions which means a job description has to go through the bargaining table or be negotiated. And so once that sort of takes place, then you'll see a few other job announcements that should be posted probably within the next few weeks or so.
Michelle, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, what I was referring specifically to was that I saw a program about hiring where science teachers were actually becoming content creators on YouTube and developing a following as a way of advertising themselves for positions.
Wow.
And I guess because they felt that they were somehow adept at creating content, and so maybe in the science department, they could be beneficial for promoting the science department or something. I don't know what the whole point of it was, but I just wondered if you've run into that at all.
No, not quite, especially because, as a public institution, there's only so many things. We can't really do like committee members shouldn't be like looking at people's social media accounts or things of that nature. And so we don't have anything like that currently. However, I know some of the questions that are typically asked, especially in a department that is maybe smaller or like looking to really expand or recruit more students, and if you have experience doing that might be something that you might also want to include when it comes to the interview process. If you have that specific experience that you mentioned that they're looking for at the other institution, but no, we don't have anything like that at this point.
All right. No more questions. We'll go ahead and move on to the second interview. So the second interview, if there's one position, there's generally 3 finalists. That's not a set number. I think that's the minimum number that typically should be forwarded. And if there's more than one position in the same department, then the finalists generally more, so it might be like 5. Okay, so the logistics. So the second interview, and I should point out again, you'll also have that student teaching demo before your second interview. Typically they happen on the same day. So the student teaching demo would happen in the morning, and then your interviews would be in the afternoon. They are generally 30 to 45 minutes around there. And again, you'll be given that timeline in advance. The committee will be held with the Vice President of Instruction, the Dean, the Chair. So you have another faculty member in there with you, and also the Chair and the Dean were both on the hiring committee. So you'll have some familiar faces. And then an HR rep will be there. This is less formal, so there's no rubric, there's no set questions, there's no one taking notes. It's more of an exchange and trying to get to know you. So it's less Q&A style and it's more conversational. The purpose is for you to sell yourself. How are you going to make yourself shine in comparison to the other candidates? So think about emphasize all the committee work that you've been on, or your extracurricular activities, or things that you want to get involved in out on campus. Like, what's going to make you stand out from the other candidates? Don't assume that all the members in the room know you or have read your application, although they will have. But just keep in mind, like, you need to reiterate. Don't just go, oh yeah, I mentioned that earlier in my application. So you want to, again, sell yourself. And so if you don't say it, it may not be recorded. So make sure that you're presenting all the key aspects. Again, it's dialogue format. It's not Q&A, so it's just a conversation. And they're just trying to get a feel for who you are. Some of the content, be ready to provide a rundown of your qualifications. So again, in particular, the Vice President of Instruction wasn't in on that interview committee, and so may ask you for a rundown. This kind of also serves as an icebreaker. So this is something that you're comfortable talking about yourself. It kind of can be used also to open up key conversations. So you might mention something in your background, and that gives a bounce off point for the committee members to ask you questions like, can you tell us more about that particular experience? So it gives them an opportunity to delve more into your background, whereas in the first interview, they can't really do that. They can't ask you questions or follow-up questions. And so again, this is more of a back and forth, this kind of less formal kind of dialogue. No notes. You might be able to have like something right in front of you just to glance at it, but again, it's going to be more formal. You're sitting at a small table with other people, and so it's more intimate in that way. Do your research about the job, in particular, if there is something specific that the department is looking for. Sometimes, for example, in math, they might be looking for a generalist, for example, or they might be looking for someone that has specialties in particular areas. And so if that's mentioned in the application or in the job description, then that might be something you want to emphasize as part of your background. So do your research about the job and also the college. So go to the About Sierra College, go to the website, kind of read some of that background. What is the mission statement? What are the goals of the college? Just kind of be fresh to have some of that again. And it also gives you a springboard for conversation with the hiring committee. Do expect to be asked, why do you want to work at this campus? So be thinking about that answer. Why do you want to work here? In particular, so why do you want to work at Sierra College versus some of the other colleges in the area? And have a specific answer in mind. Content. Where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years? This is a common question. And so, of course, the goal would be that you're tenured after 4 years and not retiring. So don't be like, I was kind of retiring in 3 years. And also developing programs. So again, where do you see yourself at Sierra College? What programs on campus do you see yourself getting involved in or creating? So kind of just seeing where you, what kind of impact you'd have on Sierra College specifically. And then also be prepared to ask a relevant question. So at the end, they always ask you, and this is for the first interview as well, they'll ask you, do you have a question? And so have a relevant question prepared. It shouldn't just be, when will I be notified? So have a question about the campus, about what the campus is working on. Again, kind of do your research and have something specific that you can ask. It shows your knowledge base that way. But it also can answer a question that you might sincerely want that answer to. So what not to do. Previous to Rebecca Bakikio, our Vice President of Instruction was Deb Sutphin. And I asked her in preparation the first time that I taught this, and the second time, kind of did some follow-up, see if there's anything she wanted to add. What were some of the tips on what not to do during a second interview? And this was her feedback. One, do not talk too much. So sometimes, again, people get nervous and they talk a lot, but it doesn't allow for a dialogue exchange. It doesn't allow time for questions, interaction. So try, if you find yourself talking too much, just again, like take a deep breath, pause, and allow others in the committee to chime in. On the flip side of that, do not talk too little. So I mentioned the very start of this workshop that I would reveal to you some of the tips that I realized for why I may not have been getting the full-time position after a series of second interviews. And one of them was I realized that I didn't talk enough. And by that, I mean that I knew the right answers. I knew the questions, I knew the right answers, but I was kind of perfunctory. I was like, this is what the answer is. And then, you know, right? And I didn't elaborate. I didn't allow my personality to shine. I think I was more nervous and timid. And so I just kind of gave the correct answer without kind of relaxing and elaborating more. And so that was one of the things that I did for my second interview at Sierra College, and what landed, hopefully, partly what landed the job. Do not focus on why this job would be good for you on a personal level. So sometimes, and I've seen this on the first interview level as well, you might have faculty who say, oh, I really want to move to this area. I have family here, so this would be so good for me. And really, it shouldn't necessarily be about you. It should be, how do you impact Sierra College? So it's not what Sierra College can do for you, it's what you can do for the college. So focus on your impact on the college. And then lastly was do not cry or beg. And I remember when Deb Sutphen said that, and I was like, really? Like, people cry? And she's like, oh yeah. She was like, you know, people are, they're so passionate about the job, about Sierra College, about teaching, and they really, really, really want this job, and they'll be the best instructor ever. And so they get emotional, and that can be uncomfortable and awkward. So it's recommended to avoid crying or begging.
Can I interrupt there, Andrea?
Yeah.
And just say that I think some of these things have shifted quite a bit as we look more at equity-mindedness and equity-minded practices. And, you know, and if you cry, we want to see your true authentic self, right? And that's kind of what we want to see that also transpires into the classroom, right? Because being your true authentic self connects with students. And so I also want to say, you know, if that happens to happen, we're not going to be like, oh my gosh, you know, because equity work is about being uncomfortable. And so I just want to, you know, make sure that doesn't totally turn people off, you know, if that's who your true authentic self is in that moment. That's really a different type of conversation that takes place during, you know, first or second round interviews as well. So just want to, you know, that some of these things have shifted a little bit in the past couple of years or few years.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Questions about the second interview? Questions at all? Questions about any step in the interview process, application, first interview, second interview? Mika.
Latoya, did you say that they do not ask the where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years anymore?
Yes, that's correct. Just because we could create some disparate impact for folks who are planning on retiring, right? We don't want to say like, we're not going to hire you because you, you know, because that is your plan. What we'll be looking more for, though, is the questions not necessarily where do you see yourself in this many years, but, you know, what contributions or where do you see yourself making an impact on the college?
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
For the applications, here, let me turn my video on so you can actually see me. Hi. For the applications that require a portfolio, like in the arts, is that portfolio meant to be condensed into a single PDF? Or is there a separate portfolio service that will be used to submit those images?
Yeah, I would say usually a PDF. We are not using a different service. So whatever is going to work for you to be able to upload it into NeoGov. I would say probably PDF is the best approach, just so things don't get, you know, messed up or moved around. I know sometimes in other systems like Word or whatever, sometimes images shift and things of that nature.
Wonderful, thank you.
You're welcome.
Elena, you had a question?
Yeah, first I was going to mention, if you want to stop sharing your screen, I could see you a lot better. But my question I put in the chat, And I was asking, oh, it just disappeared because of course it did. Oh, there it is. Okay. So I come from a business background and I work in a CTE area. It's very different from English. And I had never been taught the difference between like an industry resume, which in my experience was always 1 page maximum. Don't you dare go over that kind of thing. And an academic CV where someone was telling me like, yeah, you could submit like 12 pages. And I was like, what? You want me to, huh? And so that was enlightening. And so I was wondering if anyone has advice on like that part of the application process. Like, should you be turning in a CV or a resume or what? And like, what all should go on there?
Yeah, I would say definitely, you want to give the best picture of your holistic experience, right? And so I think within especially a CTE field, I think it's important to list, or describe in detail that industry experience you have, because I would say that most CTE fields are looking for both, a both and, right? What experience can you, how can you partner with industry partners, and how can you bring that work experience into the classroom? And so I would say probably not 12 pages, right? Because committee members are reviewing, potentially upwards of 100 applications. And so, but I would say, no, it doesn't have to be a 1-pager either. Like you want to present your best self, right? And so you want to present all of the information you think will be relevant for the committee members to review and know about you. And so I would say that industry experience is important, as well as your classroom experience. And that probably translates well for other disciplines as well. Like I know I teach part-time for American River College. Obviously my background's in human resources, so I do a both and. Like I do, I put the information, as a human resources manager, human resources director, and kind of like how I use that information in the classroom and providing examples to my students. I hope that answers your question, Melina. Perfect.
I have a question.
Yeah, I see Marie has her hand up.
Sure. So mine actually sort of dovetails with Melina's question there. From the opposite end is that before I taught community college, my training was much more like academic research focused oriented. So I come from a field where it's like 12-page CVs. And I was also told, like, that's outrageous. Do not do that for a community college position. So similar question, not 1 page, not 12, 6? Like what? I mean, right. I know that there's not one, right answer, but like,
right.
Are they going to stop reading after page 2?
Nope.
Like, what are we doing here?
So committee members are required to review all application materials. So, if you are the person who submits 12 pages, we have to read all 12 of those pages. I don't think there's a correct number. As you mentioned, it's going to be based off of each of our experiences, right? And so again, like I always would reflect on, how does this information demonstrate my ability to be to teach in the classroom? How does this experience demonstrate my ability to connect with students? How does this experience, relate to my ability to student success and closing equity gaps? And so, I don't think there's a correct answer, because we all have a variety of different experiences. I would say my CV, I think, is like 6 or 7 pages long, and I include training and my training experience. I've included, my research experience as well. And so it just really depends, I would say, on the discipline. It depends on, your own personal stories as well. And so I would say probably 12 pages probably is a little lengthy, and so there might be things that you want to cut out, especially if things aren't, as relevant, like maybe some things have evolved. Maybe you did research, 20 years ago, but you've also done research that's a lot more relevant 5 or 6 or 7 years ago. And so taking those kind of things into consideration as well.
Thank you.
No problem.
I have a question. I believe I heard in the very beginning that this NeoGov is going to be used like across the state, or like when we fill it in once, obviously every position is different. You modify it and all that. But this isn't exclusive then to Sierra College.
No, it's not. That's the beautiful thing about NeoGov. So NeoGov is used for a lot of public institutions. So for example, and a lot of also other community colleges use this system. So once you have this information entered, and let's say you want to then turn around and apply for the city of Sacramento, or you want to turn around and apply for another community college that has this system, that information will already be kind of generated so that then you can modify.
Okay, thank you. I'm kind of in a little stun that I don't have that information in anymore.
Yeah.
It's very developed, you know, and I'm like, oh, shoot, you know, I knew that I had it developed at different places, but I was like, oh, this is going to be a challenge.
Yeah, so you know, probably starting sooner, and it does it, and you can save as you go, so don't feel like you have to do it all in one shot, you know.
Right.
And so if you find, you know, materials that you have from different places, and I don't know if you still have access to Higher Touch. You may want to try to see, you know, if there's things that you can download, or if there's another application you submitted that you saved somewhere.
I understand. Yeah, I'm gonna try. It's just, you know, sometimes there's certain things that it's been effective. You know, I do get interviews from it. So, but I also do customize. So I'm not like just putting the same exact thing in every time, because obviously that would not be as effective, you know?
Right.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem. I think John had his hand
Yeah,
up.
John, you had a question?
Yeah. Andrea? So you had mentioned several times about mentioning committee work. And for a lot of part-timers, it's pretty hard to serve on committees. We don't have that many opportunities to do so.
Right.
So, I mean, how would you address that potential weakness in your background? Do you have any
I'm not
suggestions?
sure that you need to focus in on as a weakness. I would just focus on what kind of background experience you have. So sorry, from academic senate, I'm like committee brain. I'm always like, we're always appointing to committees, and so that's my brain goes there first. But no, any kind of background, other relevant job experience, anything that you bring to the table. So it doesn't have to be committee work.
Yeah, John, it could also be community work, organizations that you're a part of outside of, you know, the academic field. That would translate well. And it can also be a matter of, I know that these are my interests, and I know these are some of the committees that we have on campus, and this is, you know, a committee I would have an interest in being a part of if I were to be offered a position as a full-time instructor.
That's a good tip. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a question.
Elena?
Sorry.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to ask about references. So, you know, I worked for 20 years outside of Sierra in my field, and then I've been on campus now for 7 years. When you're talking about references and you're looking at an in-house kind of hire, is it beneficial to have a diversity of references outside of the campus, or because it's the campus, you know, just having primarily campus references?
I would say both. So you definitely want to have at least probably at least one reference that's outside of, you know, Sierra College. So if you worked at another institution, for example, or whatever you mentioned your prior work experience being, if you still have connections with that particular employer as well, I would say probably including that.
Oh, and following up on that,
Thank you.
A lot of people have told me that they submit letters of recommendation and all kinds of extra things with their application, but if it's not asked for, my thought would be to just stick with exactly what's asked for. But do you recommend submitting supplemental stuff in your application?
So Sierra College does not review letters of recommendation. I know that it is a requirement for, I believe, the Los Rios Community College District. So I would say don't even bother uploading a letter of recommendation because we're not going to look at it. I would say other supplemental documents, again, it depends on, is this going to help, you know, show your most holistic self and, you know, all of your background experiences? That's different from what you've already listed throughout your curriculum vitae or throughout your resume or throughout your philosophy statement, you know? And so, but I would say sometimes what is helpful are, especially for like CTE folks, is, you know, if you have certain certifications you've done, or if you've taken, you know, some equity-minded courses that you want to upload those sort of, certificates of completion, that might be helpful as well as sort of supplemental information. But letters of recommendation, we don't review at the college.
Thank you.
Preeti, you had a question?
Yes. Yeah, I was just going back what Latoya had said about putting what to put in CV and, how much information. So here's my question. So, in CV, when I put my professional experience and my academic experience, and then in application, also they ask you, right, your work experience and duties. So duties I'll explain in detail in application, but in CV, do I have to describe each job I did? Like, or can I just say this is my experience from this year to this year, And in application, I put more, or do I put at the same place, like at the both places? So,
Yeah. So what I usually do, Preeti, when I'm filling out an application is the application itself, I usually put a little bit of more of like a summary of the duties and skills, and the resume or curriculum vitae is where I'm more detailed. So it could be a matter of duplicating that information or putting, a summary and then putting the information throughout your CV or your resume. What I'll say is, I've been a recruiter, I've been in HR for several years. And a lot of times organizations, when they're, looking at sort of the application screening rubric, which is what we mentioned as sort of the guide that, lets us know what experience folks have, we're looking for specific, sometimes they're looking for specific experiences. And so if you don't name that, within your resume, your curriculum vitae, then folks might miss that as their screening application. So I would say being as thorough as you can to sort of outline your duties and responsibilities.
In both the places, in my application as well as in my CV. CV, like I have to attach separately CV and
right. And I would say, again, sometimes within your application, you can only type so much. So if there's if you can do like a summary of that, and then you have the more detailed information throughout your CV or your resume.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I see Mika, your hand's up. Is that another question or is that old?
Yeah, just yes, it's a new question.
Okay.
And it's in regards to recommendations for who to list as your references, like a dean versus a faculty member who's evaluated you.
Yeah, great question. And so I think it's totally fine to have a department chair who's evaluated you, right? It's probably better to have somebody who's seen you in the classroom and can really speak to those abilities. You may want to also list a dean just as a kind of and I'm talking about more than just our institution, but other organizations as well. Sometimes, some organizations want to talk to the dean of that college. And so it might be good to have sort of both listed, in case they want to reach out to either one or one versus the other.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I think I see something in the chat. Educational experience at CV is diverse and doesn't allow a standard pattern in that discipline. Michelle, I'm not sure if I'm totally following the question.
I went through a hiring training there at Sierra, and they were mentioning that some people, there's in the past that there was sort of a pattern that people were supposed to follow that would be an educational pattern towards becoming a professor. And that if you were outside that pattern, like if you went into more diverse kind of circuitous ways of getting there, that was not seen as a positive. And so what the hiring fellow, the workshop coordinator was saying was that they're kind of changing their minds about that, because a more diverse perspective is actually you can contribute more sometimes if you have not just done this straight line right to that particular discipline.
Right, and I would absolutely agree with that latter, Michelle, is that we're looking at, the diversity of your experiences. What experiences can you bring into that classroom, especially if you have diverse experiences, right? So yes, I would say sort of And I think, a lot of underrepresented communities, we don't have the privilege, female identifying individuals, folks from LGBTQIA communities, people of color, we don't have the luxury of being able to follow this particular path. So a lot of times it is that diversity of experiences that really helps us in the classroom. And so I would say there's not, one path. I would say, as you mentioned, if there's intersecting sort of experiences that really have helped contribute towards how you are as an instructor, then I would include that information.
I support that. All right, hands up. I see Tanya.
Yeah, I had a question concerning cover letters. For Sierra College specifically, how much of the cover letter would you prefer be more geared towards teaching philosophy, and how much should it include more like background and qualifications?
I would say make sure to follow the prompts, Tanya. So I think the prompts for the cover letter for faculty positions is more about qualifications. And then the teaching philosophy statement's very, different and very much more focused on how are you going to support specific students of color, right? And so I would say making sure that you're following sort of the prompts in a way that kind of tells your story and focuses more on your qualifications would probably be the best approach.
Okay, thanks.
And I see Kim, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm going to actually ask a follow-up question to her question first, and that is, how long should the cover letter be? Because mine is becoming several pages at this point.
Yeah, I think, again, it depends on, the best thing is making sure that you're responding to those prompts, right? And so the prompts talk about your skills and how you would use those skills in the classroom. It talks about how you would be able to support diverse student population. And there's another prompt that I don't remember right now because it's 5:35. And so responding to those specifically, I would say, again, this kind of goes back to the CV kind of question, it's really about your story. So I would say probably shouldn't be a 12-page cover letter, and maybe not necessarily a 1-page cover letter either. I've seen anywhere between 2 to 4 pages on some of these cover letters. And so, but again, it's your story. So your story might be, really unique and require the 6-7 pages. But being mindful that, again, committee members are reviewing a lot of materials and how can I be able to get my point across.
Does Sierra have in their applications, many of them will say no more than 2 pages,
Yeah, that's actually true. Great point, Darla. I don't remember for faculty positions, but I do believe it says no more than 4 pages for some of our positions, but I don't recall which positions those are. But it will say it on there. Thank you for that point.
Yeah, it's usually our classified positions that say the 4-page minimum or maximum, sorry.
Thank you, Brittany.
You're welcome.
My actual question was actually about transcripts. It says applicable transcripts. Do they have to be official? And if I've already applied several times for jobs at Sierra, do you have my transcripts on file still, or did those go someplace else?
They don't go someplace else. So remember that every time you apply, there's a new committee looking at your application materials, right? And every time you apply, there's a new committee that's looking at whether you meet the minimum qualifications for your position. So unofficial transcripts are okay at the time of application, but just remembering that we will require your official transcripts if you are selected for hire. Did I answer that full question? Brittany, was there something I'm missing?
I would just also make sure that it does have the conferred date and the degree that was awarded as well. But yeah, I would the application will say, at least this one will now save the transcript, I'm pretty sure. But I would keep it for each application. You will need to resubmit it, even though we might have it on file.
Okay. All right. And by someplace else, I meant the trash.
All right, we have another question in chat. It says, is it looked down upon if the majority of your experiences are with one particular college rather than diverse campuses? And I would answer and say no.
No. But talking about, I think it's also important to talk about if you've been at that one campus, how have you evolved as an instructor at that campus, right? And no, definitely not looked down upon.
That's a valid answer. Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any more hands. Not sure if we missed anything in chat. I'm skimming. But is there anything else?
I want to know about your background behind you, your fish. I really do.
Screensaver, obviously, found it on Google, thought it went well with Neptune. So
I like it. Oh, I see. Oh, that's excellent. I like that. That's very creative.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I've been watching it the whole time. That was my first question. So, and that you're right with the Neptune. That's perfect. All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Let's see, one more message, see what it is.
There was a question from Tony a little bit earlier that I would like some clarification on as well. It says there have been questions about the ethnic diversity of students you've previously taught. What are they looking for?
Yeah, so I think, there's some very specific prompts about our underserved student populations. And so I would say that there's no doubt that there's barriers that our African-American, Latinx, and Native American students, our Indigenous students are facing, right? And so I say the prompts really kind of point out or describe what we're looking for. We're looking for how are you going to be able to support those students? What strategies or things do you currently do in the classroom to support those students? How have they worked? How have they not worked? What are the barriers these students are facing? And so I would say the prompts, really kind of outline what we're looking for when it comes to those specific questions.
Yeah, you can also think of specific examples that you might have had in the classroom and or your training. So think about any professional development workshops or training that you've done, through the colleges or on your own. That might also add to your answer.
Experiences outside of the classroom as well, right, folks? Like I know a lot of us teach at different places, maybe have other like full-time jobs or things of that nature. So how have those experiences been?
So would it be, I know I've done this in previous interviews of positions that I've, gotten for part-time work, but in the interview process, is it better to have kind of a list of different experiences, or would it be better to show actually tell an experience in detail and how you worked through it, how you helped, or et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I would say it depends on the question. And I think it's probably definitely a both and, I think it's important to walk through that experience with the committee, again, going back to the detailed part that Andrea was mentioning, it's important to be detailed. And there might be some places where it is, sort of listing things out as well. So I think it just kind of depends on the question.
Any others? Last call.
Yeah, I have another question. I came in late. I took my goats out to dinner and I forgot I had today at 4. And so I was wondering where I can find the recording of this when it's over.
That is a really good question. I know that I'll be giving it to ProDev and they'll be posting it. I haven't accessed recordings myself, so I'm unfamiliar. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, I believe ProDev might email something out with a link with this particular recording.
Okay, thank you.
So you just have to send it to somebody to make sure it goes on ProDev.
Yeah, Andrea.
Yeah, I'll be sending it to them and they'll be posting it. Yeah.
Okay, I just did it today, so I was like.
Okay, thank you.
Can I share one little nugget?
What's that?
Can I just share one little nugget?
Yeah.
To an interview, and it was at Sierra, and you say about being prepared and all this other stuff, and I used to assume that they did read everything, and when I was walking in the room after my 30 minutes of preparation, the lady who was holding the door said, be very thorough because they haven't read your information. And I was like, okay. And I thought that I didn't want to be overly, I mean, I'm not picking on the circumstances, but I'm saying it's not always, sometimes things happen. And I was really worried about time because I was like, well, how much do I say? Because, you think, well, you've seen my application. So I now have learned not to assume at all that they've read anything. I think they probably, some of them hadn't even seen the cover letters. So it was awkward. And yeah, and I don't like that question. Tell me about you. And you're like, well, I did. I told you all this other stuff. It takes, I've been doing this for a long time and it's a lot of stuff. And so it's like awkward. But it threw me off,
Yeah. And just to be clear, committee members do now read all of the application materials. But again, remember that we read dozens of applications, right? And so it's always important to be super thorough. And I think that's the hardest part, especially with our internal candidates, especially when you see somebody across the room from you in this virtual space, since we're doing Zoom interviews, who and you feel like, well, what I do. And I say, be as thorough as possible. Pretend like you know none of us, right? And so that's why we make the comment, or that's what you'll hear during the first question, like, while we read your application materials, it's been some time, so be as thorough as possible, right? Yeah. And so, yes, giving, all of the information about yourself is incredibly important, even if you feel like they know me, so they know this information.
Yeah, I'm just, it caught me off guard, but the other side of it is, it was a good experience because it forced me to go further than and I wasn't sure if I was going far enough, or it kind of threw me, so I didn't want to over talk it, but I sort of felt like I had to. But,
yeah, there's no way you can ever cover everything that you've done. So you just want to focus on the highlights, but also kind of, keep your eye on the clock. They will let you know if they think that you're, you might be spending too much time. They'll kind of let you know and guide you to make sure that you have time to answer the other questions.
Right. Is it acceptable to bring in like an iPhone as an example with a timer set, set down the time going downward or something?
They will be go ahead, Latoya.
I know there's someone who warns
some candidates do that. Some candidates will, have a timer for themselves, but you also have a timekeeper during the interview. During the Zoom interview, somebody will kind of pop in and let you know how many minutes you have left.
I do get that, but sometimes when they tell you have 3 minutes left, but you kind of needed to speed up or slow down earlier because you discovered time was.
Yep, whatever works for you.
All right, just curious. All right,
and you might want to use your clock too for the teaching demo. If you're told that you have 10 minutes, you can have your phone start your timer.
Yep.
There's usually a clock somewhere in the room, but it may not be in line of sight for you, so that can be helpful as well.
Yeah, but either way, it's just a matter of you have those kind of, you want to be aware of the time. But and you could probably ask the person too, but I don't want to spend the time asking the person if I can just glance and see, okay, I'm where I think I am. No problem. I know these are stupid questions, and that's why I didn't do them till the end.
No stupid questions.
Okay. I'm like,
that's why we're here. We want to demystify.
There you go. Thank you.
I did have one quick question about just, I am a very new instructor, as you know, Latoya. And I, I love this work. I'm super passionate about it. I have relevant experience over the past decade. I've been working in nonprofits, etc. But I'm just wondering, with less than even a year of formal teaching experience, if that's going to be an issue.
I would say not anymore, Tanya. We really are focusing on, again, like looking at the holistic applicant. And so just because you've been teaching for, whatever number of years doesn't mean that folks are great instructors. There's also, folks who are very new, or, and I think what we're looking at is, are you evolving as an instructor? Even in that year, how have you changed from one semester to the next, right? And so I would say don't let that, for those folks who are newer in the teaching field or newer instructors, don't let that, deter you, if you will. We've hired individuals who are very new instructors as well.
Okay.
And so again, showing, as some folks mentioned earlier, showing how some of those other experiences are relevant, right? How that experience in nonprofit's relevant. Your other experiences outside of the classroom, how you bring that into the classroom, how that's helped you and shaped you as an instructor, and how that helps students.
I think it's discipline dependent too. Just my experience, but okay. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm done talking. I'm sorry. I had 2 hours before this, so this is my 4th hour. So I don't know, I'm waking up.
So Tanya, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that definitely does, and gives me a little more confidence going into this. Yeah.
Talking about other relevant experiences, I think, is important as well, the outside of the classroom experience.
Yeah, that's good to know. Thank you.
Thank you for all the wisdom. All of you.
Kim, did you have a question?
No, I think my hand might still be up from before.
Okay, I'll lower that. All right. Anyone else? Okay, well, I want to thank Brittany for walking us through that application process, and for LaToya to give us the up-to-date hands-on. Thank you, LaToya. And also, Cameron, you're still here. Thank you for attending as well. And I want to just wish all of you good luck through the interview process. If you have any individual questions, if you want to shoot me an email, feel free, aneptune@sierracollege.edu. And also let me know if you get a full-time job. I usually hear every year, I hear back from people that said, oh, this was so helpful, helped me get that full-time job, and that's so great to hear. And I like to incorporate any examples that I can into the presentation. So thank you and good luck.
Thank you. This has been very helpful.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you.